Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very special show coming right up, and our special guest today is Kaliyani, and she's here to talk to us about her new album, Tears for Inanna. Now, Kaliyani is a spiritually inspired visionary and a passionate midwife for the rebirth of the sacred feminine on the planet. At a very young age, she was deeply attracted to the more mystical aspects of existence and was deeply curious about the nature of God and the architect of spirit. Kaliyani has a BA in psychology from UCLA and an MA in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. So let's welcome to the show, Kaliyani.
Hi, Marianne.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So, you've got this amazing voice. Was it something that you always knew, gosh, I always want to be a singer?
Not really. No, it's part of the story in a sense. Yeah, I didn't really think this was going to happen.
Well, and so why don't you share with us a little bit about your path? How did you get from, because I know you were on a different path early on, and, singing kind of became part of your stories. Why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Well, when it comes to the music, I was, I think it's worth mentioning that I had a very spiritual, a life of a spiritual seeker since I was a very young girl, and, I was I'm very curious about the nature of spiritual reality and everything that was not tangible by our five senses. And there's a long version and a short version. I had a very interesting childhood growing up in Brazil, and then just a very mystically curious, I would say, and eventually that path led me to an awakening into the divine feminine. And then I got involved in conscious media. I had a media company, created a documentary called Secrets of Love. I was co-executive producer for that, and a peace platform called PeaceLink, and that was the work of Stargate Alliance and my company. And then I started on a quest to develop a film, a documentary on the divine feminine, because I was very much drawn to that through that awakening experience I've had. That was in 2004, and it led me through this path, and I felt deeply called to express what I had discovered, which was this creationary myth of Sumeria, where very differently from what we grew up knowing or being told, in that very ancient civilization about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, which was like up to 6,000 BC. There's historical accounts of the Enuma Elish tablets that says that the creator of the world was a feminine archetype, a deity, a female that created the world and all things in it and all gods under it. It's like what the Hindus call Divine Mother. So that was that just lit me up inside, and I wanted to share that with the world. But in the process of creating my other film, I knew that licensing music was something very, very complicated. And I knew that the music for this film would have to be quite special. And this voice, one day I was in deep meditation and I received a download that I was supposed to create the music. And of course I resisted because I wasn't a musician and I didn't have experience singing. But, I kept trying to avoid it, but eventually, the path's open. Usually, for me, it's how it goes. It just when I feel like I'm in my purpose, usually things just come to me. So I met my composer, Ruth Story, and I told him about my project, and we sat together, and I told him, I would love to sit with you while you help me create this piece. And he was very comfortable with it, and The Moon's Invocation was born. That was my first track. It's actually not an album. I'm not an artist that is focused on creating an album per se, but just to create these very authentic, unique pieces that are accompanied by a visual as well, which is my music video. So after that, another song came through, and it was Tears for Inanna. And, Namu is the creatrix in the sense, the Sumerian creationary myth, and Inanna is her offspring. It's almost like a relative or what came after. And she was the most venerated goddess of history. She's, that we know of, at least for 4,000 consecutive years, the most venerated goddess in history. And she acquired different names as history went on, By the time we got to Babylon, Inanna was called Ishtar. And they say she's the primordial goddess that gave inspiration and who, was the precursor of all the other goddesses that came through after Roman times and all of that. So it's very interesting. And I just became very imbued in that historical account, and I decided to study Sumerian language, which has never been heard spoken. And I would just, I guess I was just downloaded these vocals. It was a very graceful experience, and I was very surprised in myself. And it took me a while to actually release it because I didn't see myself as an artist, and there was a little bit of a, oh no, this is just for the film. But when people heard it, they insisted, that I release it. And my composer too, he was like, we have to keep working, and this is incredible. And so there was this, it gained a life of its own, and I was just like, okay, I have to surrender to this and allow it to take me, wherever it's meant to. Yeah. I just have to get my head out of the way, in a sense, and that's how it happened.
Well, it seems that Spirit definitely has a calling for you, and you're following what you're supposed to be doing.
That's right. Yes, pretty much.
Well, and so how would you define yourself as an artist? Because I know you're pretty much out of the box compared to other artists.
Yes, I guess you can say that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first, I want to say that the idea of defining something that by nature is dynamic, such as an evolving artist, is fraught with hidden traps, and that may eventually keep one locked in a box, which is the one thing that I very aware is not where I would like to be. So, to be able to stay fluid within this creation is really my quest. But I guess to answer the question, in some sense, like you said, I don't fit the standard because I didn't plan on having a singing career, and because I wear so many different creative hats. And so I have a very positive relationship with it, and no negative attachment in any way. And so I just allow what comes to be expressed freely in its own natural rhythm and time, and not feel obligated to fit any standard of delivery. But what's also different is that I feel guided to have a visual creation accompanying most, if not all, of my tracks, and it gives wings to another creative aspect of mine, which is, getting to play with between light and sound, the full spectrum of having image and vocals to it, which is beautiful. It's another creative aspect of what I do. So I guess going back to your question, the most simple way to answer would be that I'm a singles artist who is very much connected to the greater purpose behind the singing in a different way than most artists are, just and more than just the simple joy of singing. I'm even, you could say, a little bit of a stage shy, and I love writing more, and I love, actually not fitting the box is perfectly fine with me. I don't think I would like to tour. That's one of the things that, most people are like, would you tour? I'm like, with all the
Probably
hats
not,
wear.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's, what makes your work so profound, because it's so different from everybody else. There's no, you're definitely following your own path and blazing your own trail as you go.
I guess, yes. And it's fun. It's fun when you don't have the attachments or a feeling of, obligation or, I guess in my spiritual evolution, I learned to just, be with what is and be comfortable with it, and not having a response that is generated by a feeling of having to fit in or a pressure to expectations outside. And it's very freeing, and I guess it makes it more authentic for me. Not to say that artists are not. A lot of artists are a lot more prolific producers of music than I am, and they have a very authentic voice, of course. It's just a different way of doing it. So
everyone definitely is on their own path, with that. So.
Yeah. And I think what's important for me is to tell the story. I'm a storyteller, and I tell the story through music and through videos, and I like to explore myths that have been forgotten, and tell new stories. Because our world community, our society has been shaped by the stories we believe in, the stories we've been told, the myths we've lived by. And I think we're in such a huge time of transition, and it's time to tell new stories that fit better our times, to be inspired by even, things that we were not in touch with that existed before, that give us a new perspective about what is possible that has been forgotten. And that's why Inanna fits in so well with the current time, because she is an archetype, a myth, a goddess that was always depicted as a woman who's fully aware of her feminine power. And we're in such a moment of liberation, a further awakening of the feminine in the world, and the honoring of it, and all the things that were associated with it that had been vilified in the past, including objectification, over-sexualization of women, association of our female sexuality with sin, or temptress or whatever, that needs to be cleared, because like Inanna, she was very bold and didn't act from fear and didn't really care how others perceived her. She was a goddess of love, sensuality, fertility, procreation, even war. So she has so many types and roles that don't fit the traditional archetype of what a goddess would be like. And then in Akkadian times and Assyrians, she was Ishtar, like I said, and then later the Phoenicians and Jews, she was Astarte, and she evolved that way. She was also known as the morning and evening star, which is Venus. So the goddess Venus in Rome would be like a new evolution of Inanna. So Inanna was like the first in a sense, and it's such an incredible thing to to awaken to that, and she was off the box for sure. And I think that's where women are. We're getting out of this small box that we've been placed in, and we're helping the world to look at things in a different way, having different perspectives about who we are and where we're going. And how can we create a better life, free of shame, free of guilt, free of dogma, a life that is more inclusive and loving and equalizing of all beings.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're so right. This is such a great time for women, especially we've got, different movements that are happening that are, highlighting just some of the things that haven't been exactly equal, or some treatment that needs to be corrected in regards to how women are treated here. And so when we look at that and you see this movement happen, there's so much that's being moved forward. You could see the energy move with this.
Yes. It's very, very incredible time to be living in. It's so much at stake at the same time, and to just, I think the quest of the feminine is also to reconnect with nature and not just use it, but work with it, as we have explored and exploited the earth so much unconsciously. Now we're at a point where we may not survive as a race. A lot of the most progressive scientists are doubting the fact that there is actually a solution, even if we, and the biggest catalyst is global warming to this, sixth extinction that we're going to. It's the sixth extinction event in history. We're losing so many species, and now the corals have died. It's 2/3 of the ocean corals. And this is not something you hear in the news, and that's why I love documentary, because it is the place where we go to explore and question and create movements and educate the public about things that are so crucial that the system doesn't have really an interest in promoting so much, because, it's too big, or it's going to take attention from, the money-making machine that we live in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when we look at, different choices in regards to, like, fossil fuels, there's always been a pushback with that. And it is definitely a money-motivated thing.
Okay, Kaliyani, I know we're going to pause here just for a moment to play your song, Tears for Inanna. So we're going to pause here and we'll be right back. What a beautiful song, and I'm so glad you're able to share that with us. I would love for you to dive in a little bit in regards to the inspiration behind the song and also why you chose to name it Tears for Inanna.
Well, Tears for Inanna, well, I told you a little bit about this archetype, this goddess from ancient Sumerian times. And the title, Tears for Inanna, comes from an idea of this feeling of longing and even mourning, the distortions that were created that tainted something that was originally natural and beautiful and free. A woman's freedom to be who she is and unbound by dogma or the bigotry of religion. It is something that I'm very passionate about. So tears come from this sad realization of what could have been, of what was, and of what I perceive as a power agenda that was created and enforced by religion, unfortunately, and created a lot of fear, a lot of control, and made wrong a lot of things that were just natural and normal. And so it is tears for that loss, the loss of freedom, the loss of truth, the witnessing of the distortions. And I think and I hope that the music that comes from this place within me that touched me so deeply, that just the sound frequency of it, because I believe very much that words can be very limiting because they are bound by interpretations of the mind. And you see the music that has come through from this awakening is very much mostly pure sound tones. And, I feel like when we move into a different dimension of existence, words will not be necessary anymore. And the emission of sound is the true language, because sound doesn't lie. It's just a frequency, and if it's got the presence of the heart, whatever is present when you express through pure sound vibration, it's going to touch people in just the right place, and it's not something that can be mentalized, rationalized, or it's just pure feeling. And that's why people tell me this is so intense and so profound, and people tell me they're using it now as part of their morning practice or their yoga, or if they dance, they like to listen to it first, or it's a lot of incredible responses I've had that have even informed me as just a mere navigator of this direction, this path that I've been put in, that it's not like I know everything I'm doing. I'm being taken, and it's not coming from, it's more of a surrender than, and I'm learning along the way. So I'm being informed by what is coming through while I stay authentic to it. So it is, it's very special, and I'm learning about it as I go too. So I've been really blessed with the response, and it fits a very specific niche, and hopefully this niche is going to grow wider, and people are going to start opening more to their true authentic voices. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. It's interesting because when I was listening to your music, you can feel that spiritual connection. So I'm not surprised that people are using this as part of their meditative practice, or when they're doing yoga, whatever the case is, because they're really, you could feel that soul connection. When I was listening to the music, I was like, wow, okay. And it is such a, it's just a very peaceful place that it brings you to, you know, and I'm sure, and you can probably explain this to me. I mean, I don't know, but in singing it, it has to be just like you are just basically like channeling the music.
Yeah, I guess in a sense it could be interpreted that way, and I do feel like it is a channeling. It's not something that was created from a mind space. It was more like just a letting go and an opening, and letting go of the mind and letting myself open to receive. It's this transmission. Allow it to carry this this inspiration per se, this sense of being touched by something so deeply and something that feels so special. It touched such a deep part of me that can't really be put into words, could not be logically expressed. It would lose its value in a sense, you know. But just listening to how it speaks to me and allowing that voice to somehow come out in with the music. And
is that how your spiritual practice works in regards to your music? It's just kind of this flow?
Yes, pretty much. My spiritual practice is as fluid as my career, my path as an artist as well, and I just try not to attach myself to models or forms, you know, and I allow the truth of my heart to guide me as to where I go with it from one phase to the next. So it can be, I like to, define myself spiritually in a sense as I could be described as a Buddhist, Taoist, pagan, you know, mystic, you just name it. I've done a little bit of everything. And I think becoming too rigid and believing that there's only one way or one path has been our biggest mistake, because that's what creates separation. It's what, you know, it's like my team is better than yours, and my political system is better than yours. And how about admitting that we have strengths and weaknesses in everything, and when we join our hearts and we allow only the best of each thing to lead us, then we have a perfect harmony. We can create a harmonious life, and we can be comfortable around anyone, and we don't judge, and you know, that there's no need to overdo or try to be better than anyone else, because there's no perfection, and all of it is perfect at the same time. There's the perfection is in the merging, in the collective work, and loving one another and supporting one another. We're all part of the same big family, and I think this is where we're moving. I feel that's where we should slowly but surely be heading in that direction of collective work. We're so much stronger when we're together, instead of wanting to dominate and individualize and you know, create what you call hierarchies of superiority, inferiority. You know, everything is part of creation. You know, light, dark, everything, low, high, middle. So
and everything in between, right?
all shades of gray. Nothing is really black and white. And we want to make it black and white. It feels very comfortable to have an absolutism about things. And it's very comfortable because it's like, okay, we don't have to look into anything else. This is the way it is, and then you stick to that. It's a very reductionistic view of life, and a lot of our systems and our society has been built around this reductionism. But the truth is, it's a lot actually simpler and complex in a way. It's a lot more complex, but when you surrender to this dance of just allowing, with the foundational core value of the true value of divinity and God is at its core level. When we strip all the confusion, is love one another. Do unto others as you would to yourself. But in spite of knowing that, we continually fight with each other, and we're not really listening. And
isn't that the truth, right?
Absolutely. What does it take to be coherent? Creating coherency between the things we call God and what we're doing on the outside, and the things we call divine and what we call love, and the lack of integrity and coherency with those actions. Just being in the flow and trusting in my own inner voice and the truth of my heart, and trying to stick to the core values, love, equality, doing unto others as I would want done unto me, and seeing everyone as my equal. So this is how I believe the world would be a happier place. So it starts with us.
It sure does. It sure does, and we can use more people who are looking to develop that kind of relationship, not just with spirit, but also with their work.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think we're heading there. It's one little step at a time.
No judgment, for sure. Well, and so this kind of leads me to my next question, because I know that spirit is an inspiration for you. Where else do you get your inspiration for your music?
I guess I could say it is this feeling that we can be active participants in this evolutionary unfolding, and I guess what drives me at the forefront is to create justice, and especially the liberation of empowerment and liberation of women from their conditioned reality and limited beliefs. And I'm also a spiritual psychologist and a life coach, and I've done a lot of work around those places within me that I lived from a conditioned state of fear or just not trusting in my own value, and realizing where it came from, where it was created originally. And so this inspiration is, at this point, with these tracks, and the movie is making, is deeply connected to the equalization of the playing field for women, and it comes from a very compassionate place of love and compassion for what women have had to endure, and the lack of awareness, even individually, to that. It's just a generalized state of confusion and fear, and that is so embedded in the psyches of women that they have, I have a passion for making women aware of it and liberating them from those limitations, and I think that's how the goddess touched me, because this experience I had in 2004, where I went into a deep process of prayer, may explain a little bit of this. I was raised Christian and Catholic, but my mother didn't believe in going to church, but she believed in prayer. And she was raised in Western Europe amongst a lot of priests in northern Portugal. Very, very Catholic family. But in her 20s, she read a book about the Holy Inquisition, and she was so horrified at the persecution the church created that she lost inspiration in being part of the institution itself, even though she knew how powerful prayer was. So she taught us to pray, and I prayed all my life. And at the time, I was in a very big crisis in my life, and I felt like I had forgotten, disconnected from my true soul essence, and I hadn't prayed in a while, and I felt called to do this prayer that I heard when I was a child. Very long prayer. I didn't really know it by heart. It was one of the longest prayers I've ever heard and one of the most beautiful I've ever heard. So I called home and I asked my mother to give it to me, and I wrote it down. It was 3 pages long. And I started doing it every morning before I put my feet on the ground, and every night before I fell asleep was the last thing I would do. And I did it with such fervor, and it was such a beautiful, beautiful prayer. And after a few weeks, everything was revealed to me in terms of where my life was, what was happening to me, and it was very dramatic and earth-shattering. And my marriage came to an end, and I started seeing visions of, and this was a Lord prayer, right, based on Christ, the essence of the Christ. But what appeared to me was a female divinity, and I had never heard of her or seen her. I was unaware of her identity, and she looked Asian, and she had a bun on top of her head, and she dressed in silk, and sometimes she would appear in dreams, and sometimes I would see her. I remember having this window in my house that was etched glass, and when I would look through the etched glass, it was like a mosaic, and I would see this what looked like somewhat of an Asian, what a geisha would look like. And then it went from there to I had been buying this jewelry. A beautiful artist. Her name is Shankari, and she is used to make these pieces. And there was only one place that sold them, and I bought this one small medallion that had this goddess etched in the back, and I felt so compelled to have it and put it on and not take it off. I couldn't explain. And one day I asked, the day that I saw the piece on this place where I bought it from, I asked my friend Kate, who was the owner of the store, what was that piece about? Why was I so drawn to it? And he said, that's a Kuan Yin medallion, And I said, what is Kuan Yin? And she said, it's the Bodhisattva of compassion, And I, even though I had navigated so many circuits in spirituality, I had not taken a full dive into Buddhism or where she stems from, so I just I asked her, what is a bodhisattva? And this, I think, was 2003. And she said, it's a being that achieved Buddhahood but will not enter it because she wants to continue to affect change in humanity. She loves humanity, and she wants to continue to be able to influence its evolution. And if she enters Buddhahood, she'll go into a whole different dimension or realm of existence. So she exists in between heaven and earth, or the void and the astral realm. Who knows? So many different ways to interpret it, but there's ways she's able to influence, and it didn't quite, come together until all these dreams, and then I realized, I had another friend close to me at the time who was clairvoyant, and she said that the Buddha lady came to her, and so all these things were, and she said the Buddha lady is around you, and at that time I wasn't really fully conscious of what was happening. Today I look back and I see everything with a little more clarity. So basically this prayer took me to a place of receiving this awakening. I actually, for many months, could not eat. Food looked like plastic to me. And all I did was drink apple juice with a green powder, like those superfood greens, and I was going through a huge change in my life, and I wanted to stay healthy. And I knew if I didn't eat, I would be ill, and I had children I had to take care of. So I was very intuitive how I did things. So I went to, Whole Foods, and I picked up this bottle of green powder, and just completely intuitively guided. And I just organic apple juice, and I would just drink that twice a day because I couldn't swallow food. Food just didn't go down in my body, and that went on for months. And I continued to just feel this state of bliss, no matter how dramatic my life looked around me and how everything was crumbling. My whole life as I knew was falling apart, and nonetheless I had a tremendous sense of gratitude. Tears would come down, sometimes as I would be driving, and it was just a beautiful time. Felt really, really deeply connected to the divine, and I think she guided me to this path, of reawakening the sacred within the feminine, and restoring what never really stopped being the truth, but restoring that within the consciousness, our consciousness, of this planetary consciousness, where the divine feminine has been forgotten, and the qualities associated with the feminine, nurturance and softness and fluidity and pliability, flow, more watery nature. So these things that we have hardened ourselves by living through this old paradigm, which, unfortunately we've been calling it a masculine paradigm because the world has been pretty much under, the presiding rule of a man. One funny thing is, like when I was in high school and I was attending history class, I would fall asleep, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't pay attention to history. And when I look back, I think how I never saw myself in history. I wasn't part of history. There was nothing that included women. The world was about conquering and wars, and I couldn't understand it. It was a different language for me, and I couldn't relate to it, and I couldn't comprehend it. Conquistadors and, just wars, and I didn't know where my place was, and I didn't understand that world, and I fell asleep in class a lot. And today I absolutely love history, and I love history. The older it is, the more I love it. I'm like I like to go into the rabbit hole and go as far back as I can go and discover the things that we were not made aware of, and that our civilization is so much older than what we believed it was, or we were told we were, that the world is historically only a couple thousand years old, and it's actually, we've found incredibly advanced civilizations back, cultures 7,000, 13,000. Archaeology is doing incredible advancements in terms of that, and now even schools are starting to teach about that, and it's beautiful to see. Some history classes in high school are starting to include these concepts, of these civilizations that were found in, for example, in Turkey, Anatolia, region, and they are very ancient cities that had paved walks, and in Italy, for example, a very beautiful palace of Knossos, they had toilet seats and sewage systems, and the wheel, they had roads, and they had beautiful architecture. And this is 3000 BC, at the time of the building was there. Apparently, this is what we know. Who knows? Could be even older, but we just keep waking up to a different reality, and it's going to be hard to adapt to the changes. There will be a lot of changes happening, I feel, but they're exciting.
Well, anytime there's change, there's growth, so you'll be, I think there are some times where it feels like it might not be growth in the way we want, but you'll be, I think overall the change is a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we tend to resist change, and change can be difficult. It requires so much of our energy, but it's so necessary, so important. And when we come out on the other side, we're so grateful for what happened, because we grow from it, and we have new views, new sights, It's like climbing a mountain. At the bottom, it feels daunting, and you don't think you can do it, and how can you? And when you get to the top, you can see a whole new world over there that you didn't even know existed. So, we have to keep embracing change.
Well, and so for our listeners that would like to connect with you and be part of your community and also learn about Tears for Inanna, where can they go? I know you have a website, right?
I do. It's Kaliyani.com, and there you can learn more about my work. I post blogs, and the most current writing usually and connecting on real time would be on my Facebook, my personal Facebook, and then there's a Facebook page just for Kaliyani the musician, and then there as well. So
yeah, I believe we're connected on social media. I highly suggest everyone do the same, and of course, go download the song. And I want to make sure I get this right. Tears for Inanna, right?
Inanna.
Inanna, okay, I knew it was close. So, Inanna. Well, Kaliyani, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a joy, yes.
Well, thank you so much, Kaliyani, for sharing your gift and, of course, the magic of your music with us. We are at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.